Coming to you from the Loading Ready Run orbiting underground moon base, it's the LRRcast.
Say
That was-
what?
We didn't plan that.
That was real
Weird.
coordinated. I like that.
That was actually
It's quite peculiar.
connected by a single synapse.
Yeah. So this week, what we wanted to talk about is guilty pleasures.
In heavy air quotes.
Yeah, so there's a big asterisk beside this because we've talked about this a little bit on like the stream and stuff. And we want to be real clear that this is guilty in quotation marks because, these are things that we don't actually feel guilty about. These are...
Or at least ought not to.
Yeah, you don't like, and this is the case for basically for anything that you people at home, right? But this would be stuff that is, this is basically, I guess, stuff that's bad, like that you can freely admit is objectively not that good, and yet you still like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, like, I'm just thinking about like things that are that I can't defend, and I can't put up an argument to other people to convince them to.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I have no desire to attempt to convince other people to consume certain types of media.
well, I mean,
because
what I say is that like it is perfectly fine to like trash, provided you acknowledge that it is in fact trash. But just the same, it's like we have this sort of notion that's like, oh, I shouldn't like bad stuff because then I'll seem like I'm bad and I have bad taste, and I should need to
bad and you should feel
conceal
bad.
these things that I really, really like, even though,
And it turns out everybody actually likes
everybody
it.
does that, and it's also just like, who gives a shit?
Yeah. I don't think you should feel bad about consuming, whatever you want to, if whatever you're a fan of, like.
Yeah, the kind of person who would actually judge you for like a thing you like.
I mean,
maybe reassess that friendship.
we're not, it's clear that we are not at this stage, but I'd like to hope that we can get to the stage where, especially now this idea that of sort of, that everyone talks about sort of geeks are in charge now and blah, 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 blah. But this idea of, fandom or being a fan of something to maybe an excessive degree, or it shouldn't have to be something that you have to hide,
Right.
And that used to be, the thing, like, in whatever elementary school or whatever, it'd be like,
Back in the days of yore.
yeah, if you're
don't tell my mom I play video games.
you try to hide your geekiness and stuff, about how much you like computers or
It's like,
whatever.
why don't you play sports?
Yeah.
You should play with the ball instead of a joystick.
That also, I think, betrays a bit of our bias here, in that we assume that most of our guilty pleasures will, in fact, be geeky pastimes.
Well,
wherein maybe your guilty pleasure is that you actually really fucking love football.
Yeah.
yeah. It has almost like switched around that now, where it's just like, it's like your guilty pleasure of like, I actually like watching,
it's like different strokes, right? It's like you could be just like, brah, like just after hitting the showers, I just want to curl up with some Proust. I don't know what it is.
I'll cherche de Tom Peltier.
yeah.
I learned how to pronounce that, eh?
Yeah. Well, and I think it also betrays a lot about us as people, right? The things that we assume that we need to conceal from others.
Well, and your sort of peer group too.
You
right?
want to maintain this facade of
I
togetherness or some measure of being cool or interesting.
you have your Tyler Durden persona, who would never in a million years ever get busted reading a Dragonlance novel.
But man, you love that shit so much.
But it's not good. But it's good.
What I say for stuff like that is like, it's rad.
Yeah, I enjoy the word rad.
Like I remember distinctly, like in university, I was just like hanging out in like the common room or something, and there was like 3 or 4 guys who were sitting around talking about their cars, right? And super geeking out, and what I would call geeking out. Just talking about how they like totally tricked it out, and the whatever carburetors that they see. I'm now betraying my lack of knowledge in cars, but talk about all the stuff that they had done to modify their cars, and it was. I sort of had this sudden flash of sort of fascination of like, for some reason, we as a culture have decided that that's cool. Like
And
everybody like
acceptable and
and like
expected.
driving up and like opening up the hood of your car and everybody standing
Look how
around
great
looking
this
at
is.
it. That's cool. And yet doing the exact same, like, the terminology is slightly different, but the feeling is exactly the same of people talking about, their new overclocked, water-cooled computer system,
It's
right?
exactly the same. It's just like my numbers are this big, and I'm using like this, brand name that's super expensive, but it's worth it, right?
Oh, but
And
that
the outside
involves-
is fancy.
but
In
that
fact, they
involves
even
a
have,
trade-off here and here. Why did you make
Yeah.
that decision?
Well,
Oh,
because
I mean, they even have both ground effects now.
the overlap between PC modding and
Our new Stream PC has sweet LED
That's
lighting
really
in it.
does it have a spoiler?
Well, no. I mean,
should put
that's
one on it.
that then it would go too fast.
We need a Shogun combat wing.
Did
Yeah.
you see my brother showed me this. There's a gaming GPU that has rails and a magazine as part of it.
Just to be silly.
Like just part of the molding is in the shape of an AR-15 magazine with fake bullets.
Nice. I just like that, like
Maximum FPS
For-
performance.
for real, like not as like a marketing thing or anything. The fact that where graphics cards take up at least 2 PCI slots, even if it's not a SLI card, like even if it's not
Right.
like a dual card, it's just the size of the card, and they usually have a separate power supply now. too.
Right. Even
Be-
if they don't necessarily require them.
Well, even if the idea is that they require some, like there's
Right.
the point where like the amount of RAM and the processor power on your graphics card is substantially higher than what's actually in your computer sometimes.
Right.
Anyway,
Well-
unrelated to the topic at hand.
I was gonna start with into some specific examples with something that I think Cam will agree with. The Riddick movies. Those are rad.
I can get in.
Super
I
rad.
can get in on that. Yeah.
It's like, especially like Chronicles of Riddick. That movie's really dumb.
Well,
Yeah, it's impressively
It's
stupid.
impressively stupid, but it's so rad.
Necromongers.
what I really love about, I mean, like, have you seen the new one? The non, like the sequel to
Oh,
the
shit, no, I
Chronicles of
haven't.
Riddick?
No.
I should fix
Because so
that.
it's really weird because it goes.
It looks like it's the same as the first one. Only
Yeah, it goes pitch black,
Chronicles of
Chronicles of Riddick, and then just Riddick.
Excuse me.
And like Pitch Black is a super cool movie, right? It's like all
It's
this,
interesting, yeah.
this like cool, people trying to survive and stuff. And Riddick
Yeah,
is kind of a minor character, not a minor character, but he's one of many characters in it.
Right.
It's almost like an extended cameo
Yeah,
from his other adventures out in the universe.
yeah. It's like a backdoor pilot.
Yeah. And then
And then they did Chronicles of Riddick, which is just batshit crazy.
yeah, it's like there's this weird survival horror movie with like a survival sci-fi movie. Then with the same character, they make Conan the King
yeah. It's just
in
like,
space.
and it's just like nothing in Pitch Black has indicated any of what's
Yeah.
in the Chronicles of Riddick. And then they brought
also
out
the
Riddick.
animated stuff too. Did
Oh
you
right,
see-
that's
did
true.
you
Yeah,
see that?
that's pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the video games which were very good,
I've heard
which are actually canonical, I believe.
really.
Oh.
Escape
I've heard
from
only good things about Escape from Butcher Bay.
Escape from Butcher Bay in particular. The Assault on Dark Athena I don't actually know that much about, but I played Escape from Butcher Bay, and it's really fun. Like it's a great game. And
Excuse me.
it's I love what makes Riddick is like anybody can be a super badass. If you wear like a black leather trench coat and sunglasses and kung fu and like all that kind of stuff, like that's easy. Riddick, the best thing about it in like Escape from Butcher Bay is like I think 2 or 3 times in it you get captured
Right.
again. Like you try to escape and you mess up. You get captured, and then so you're in like the warden's office, and Riddick is just like apologizing. He's just like, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again."
Sure,
and,
it won't.
And somehow his apologizing sounds like a threat. And only Riddick can do that.
Like, Chronicles of Riddick had that wonderful moment where he's being menaced by two other prisoners on
Right,
in
yeah,
the prison
yeah.
colony.
Oh boy.
And he's like sipping from a tin cup. And one of the other prisoners says, "What are you going to do? Kill us with your coffee cup?" And he looks at them and he
He
says,
corrects them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he says, "Teacup, this is tea. And yes, I'm going to kill you with my teacup." And
And
looks
he
at them,
does.
and he puts it down on a rock nearby. And one of them comes at him, and he grabs the teacup, and he cuts out the guy's heart like it's a cookie cutter,
Yeah.
right? And then, like, the other guy is just standing there stupefied at him. And he looks around and picks up the key from a can of Spam. And he puts it on the rock. And looks at the other guy, who just turns around and leaves.
So like, fuck
So
it.
what I love though is that so they did that, like they did that Chronicles of Riddick. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then they did Riddick, this like sequel movie, where the first 10 minutes is because like at the end of Chronicles of Riddick, he's like Lord of the Necromongers now.
Yeah.
And then because he killed the previous Lord. And so then at the beginning of Chronicles of Riddick, or beginning of Riddick, he's like, "Oh, I think this planet is like the Furian homeworld or something. That's like, this is where
Right.
I came from."
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go down with like some of my henchmen and check it out. And he goes down, his henchmen betray him and like leave him for dead on the planet and fly away. Boom. No mention of the Necromongers again in the entire movie until like the very end. So it's just like, how fast can we get Riddick away from this stupid thing with the Necromongers back onto a planet where everything's trying to kill him?
Honestly, that really interests me because it kind of de-escalates the scope of the movie.
Yeah, it totally
'Cause,
does.
You know, there was a wonderful episode of Extra Credits talking about spectacle creep in media, and like the things you have to do when your spectacle gets like just really starts overreaching itself is you got to bring it like back down to a normal level, because otherwise there's like nowhere left to go
Well, it's also
without becoming completely outrageous.
well, it's also the realization that Riddick fighting an army of whatever big scary monster guys shooting lasers and stuff at them isn't actually very interesting. What's cool about Riddick is the sort of brutal
The struggle.
one-on-one
Yeah.
struggling, and so I thoroughly. I mean, it's again kind of pretty dumb movie,
Yeah.
but,
But
it's pretty fun.
It's charming,
It is very charming.
I guess.
Also,
Is that the essence of it? That
I
it's-
think so, that it's charming.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I don't know. I guess it is sort of like earnest in a kind of charming way. It's just like,
So I thought for a second that you were comparing it to the Ernest movies.
no, but it's like, it's weird because a lot of movies like tread that line where it's like, they have the ridiculousness and, you really ought to love them, but some aspect of their attitude or just the way they're carried off, it just like doesn't hit that charming button.
It's a
Like-
certain. I think commitment is the important bit, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't do it and try to sort of be also kind of half winking
I mean,
to
it
the
may
camera.
be something sort of intangible. It's like I got the same rad vibe off of Jupiter Ascending.
Okay.
I haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
it's actually like cut from the same cloth as Chronicles of Riddick,
Is
and that
this-
movie is rad.
Is what we're looking for here kind of the essence of what makes a good cult movie?
Maybe. It's weird. Like making a good cult movie is a very strange process because like if you try to force it, it doesn't work.
Right.
You end up with something like
Snakes on a plane.
or like yeah, that's a good example. Or like Repo the Genetic Opera. People are gonna fight me on this, but it's like I really dislike that movie because I thought it was trying so hard to be a cult classic,
Right.
and it's like you cannot force that. It's like trying to create virality. You can't.
I mean, there are
Because
elements.
people will smell the bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So yes, I guess Riddick definitely.
Vin Diesel is like a huge D&D player.
Relevant to the previous.
Apparently his tattoos are like his character names or something. So the story goes.
I like that.
He sounds like a really cool guy.
He does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, tangentially related to yours is my guilty pleasure,
In
air
quotations,
quotes, as we have discussed, are Warhammer 40k novels.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
right out of the gates compelled to mention here that I have a bachelor's degree in English literature, and I've read a lot of books in my day, and a lot of very good, important books, and I still love the Gaunt's Ghost series.
Well, because it's like, operating at like a high level like that, at a certain level is probably exhausting. And sometimes you just want like something really goofy and dumb and just fun as shit.
Yeah, well, it's like they're basically Horatio Hornblower novels, or actually like Sharp's Company.
Okay.
Is probably what they have the most in common with, where it's like, oh, how are Gaunt and the boys going to save the Imperium today? Better tune in. And like they shoot a bunch of like bad guys with lasers, and they win.
Yep.
For some reason.
Also, I remember reading a little bit. Like, is it anything like the fluff text in the codices?
A little bit.
Because that was pretty bonkers.
Yeah, no, like the scale of Warhammer 40k is absolutely insane, right? And they know it, and they celebrate it. And the Gaunt's Ghost novels are interesting because they deal with just normal human soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
In that world, right? They aren't superhuman, but they lead a charmed life, I guess, because they don't get removed in handfuls. Or at least the named characters don't.
Yeah, they don't get, like, eaten by Tyranids or, like...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess related to that, we can sort of chain things together here. I mean, I also greatly enjoy the 40k. I mean, I haven't actually...
40k is pretty rad.
I haven't actually read any of the novels.
Oh, I'll give you some.
But
I can hook you up. The Eisenhorn novels are also real good.
But I not only with 40k, but with like I just love to go into get that like wiki fall into the wiki hole. Usually it's not actually Wikipedia we're talking. Usually because Wikipedia sort of banishes that kind of stuff as being way too insular. But there'll be like the Wikia 4-year thing.
Right.
And I just love, linking from one thing to another. I've done the same, and just finding out all about, it's the crazy stuff that's going on in the 40k universe or the, Star Wars extended universe stuff and stuff. Where it's just like you can get like the info dump without the actual like, plot and characterization, just the actual like all the crazy background info that goes into this world.
And like, I feel it's also important for me to note here that we come from this as people who make videos about Magic the Gathering.
Right. And I mean,
like, I still approach this as a guilty pleasure.
By the same token, I mean, I've spent many time in the like MTG Salvation wiki going around, the story of whatever Kamigawa or great. I mean,
it's fun being Vorthos.
Yeah. But this is sort of Vorthos, but not just in the context of Magic, in sort of the context.
Also, for those of you who don't know what Vorthos is, Vorthos is the fourth player archetype in Magic the Gathering. There's Timmy, Johnny, Spike, and Vorthos. Just briefly, these are just like arbitrary archetypes that someone named at some point, describing types of Magic players.
Well, there's something that's actually used internally at Wizards of the Coast to
we want to market this to Johnny, or
when they're talking about
this to Timmy or something,
targeting cards and stuff.
Yeah, so it's like Timmy loves big dragons and like big goofy effects, and he's just like super happy to slam permanents and turn them sideways and just like go for the face. Johnny likes building weird card interactions and like janky 6-card combos that don't work, and just like loves tinkering and coming up with weird stuff. And Spike is the power gamer who like goes to the legacy tournaments and like he likes playing the best cards and like
and like
in, like,
winning above all else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like winning and also just like being in a competitive environment.
It's good
Right.
net deck, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then Vorthos is the guy who's into the flavor text and lore.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's definitely me.
Yeah, and there's overlap between all those categories.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. Everyone's got some of each, but and so I used to be, like RPGs, for instance. I used to be big into like various like Palladium RPGs,
Right.
like
Oh man,
and or like
Riffs?
yeah, like Riffs.
Oh,
Like
Riffs.
God.
I have a ton of Riffs source books.
did you get Riffs Canada?
I've only yeah.
Oh
I've
my
only
God.
played a little bit of actual Riffs, but the background information, like it's like reading
Yeah,
like a Riffs novel, like this huge, some whatever Wheel of Time style,
Right.
like ridiculous 23 novel series, except it's just all the background information, not the actual like.
Right.
This
No, I
is
think
what
I
Dave
had the same
did.
experience where I only ever played like 1 or 2 Rifts campaigns, and if that, like maybe even just a few sessions. But like just reading over the source books was always very entertaining. Just like the outrageous shit they came up with, like juicers.
I played a juicer once.
Yeah,
they're just
did you ever
crazy-
hear about the mega juicers?
Yeah, no,
Yep.
we a friend of mine decided
Right.
that he wanted to run a Riffs campaign, and he would use this campaign to show us that Riffs could be the setting for a serious role-playing game with a lot of characterization,
no.
and it didn't have to be a super-powered like dice throwing fest
Okay.
in order to play a good Riffs game.
Okay.
He's like, okay, so what I want you to do is I'll make mega juicers, and
It's
fucked up
mega
right out
is
the gate.
right in there.
Mega
Yeah.
juicers. Okay.
Actually, relevant
those
to magic stuff. There's also, of course, the dragon juicers, which is a real
right.
thing too.
Instead of like chemicals, they inject themselves with
Like dragon blood?
and
Yeah,
they get
yeah.
powers that way. And their armor's like this weird carapace.
It's they're basically Charlie Sheen, except with dragon blood instead of tiger blood.
right.
But so yeah,
Right.
actually, by the way, in the Rifts universe, which is this like post-apocalyptic, semi-post-apocalyptic, it's like a magical
Well,
apocalypse has happened
they-
where these things called rifts, like they're big sort of dimensional portals have
Yeah,
opened
they
all over
figured
the
a way.
world.
Figured out a way to just like have this intersection of every possible sci-fi fantasy thing all in one place
Right.
at the same time.
But what's amazing is like the amount of world building thought that has gone into the whole thing.
Right.
And it's all sort of internally consistent in an interesting kind of way. So for instance, Riffs Canada, there's some awesome
Which is the source
stuff.
book.
Yeah, so it's a real source book. The RCMP are now they're because the government has been basically destroyed. They are a roving sort of group of freedom fighters that travel around on their robotic horses, of course.
Of course.
BC is basically entirely covered in an enormous insect hive
Okay.
that with sort of these humanoid insects things that came through what is referred to as the Great Calgary Rift, which is the largest rift in the world. It's this massive, stable rift to other dimensions.
In Calgary.
Yeah. Quebec City is an enormous walled city where they build big mechs called glitter boys.
Oh, the guys
Oh
with
man,
rail
glitter
guns.
boys
Yeah.
are so good.
Which glitter boys are these big sort of not mechs, but they're like
Power
big
suits.
power armor
yeah.
suits that have a gun that is so powerful that before they fire the gun, they have to fire spikes from their feet into the ground
and
in
there's
order
like
to
jet verniers to like
and they
compensate for the
in order
recoil.
to prevent the recoil from knocking them over.
Also, they get
Yeah,
their namesake from their highly polished laser resistant armor.
Yeah.
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 So I guess if they get mud on them, they lose their laser resistance.
Yeah.
The Georgia Strait, so the area between Vancouver Island where we live and the mainland. So Vancouver is all like these insect hives. The area between the two is full of sea monsters.
As it is.
What's amazing is in the in this source book, in the official source book, the Cabrosaurus is a real thing.
That's fantastic.
And is mentioned, which is like they must have like been here because the Cabrosaurus is the most possible local thing that nobody here even really cares about.
Yeah.
like
really-
that's
like-
really inside.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
it's
that-
like
that
one
is something-
beach in Victoria.
Yeah, that's like, I don't know if you know about this, but that's something we put on T-shirts to sell to people.
Yeah,
To
Nope.
sell to tourists.
Right, sorry, strike people. Nobody here gives a shit about the Cabrosaurus.
exactly. It's like the worst possible, like trying to be Loch Ness monster, but not really.
Yeah, it's not. It's
But
like,
nobody really even committing to the thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we got one of those too. What do you call it?
There's
Looks at sign.
Yeah,
there's
the
one
Starbucksaurus.
there's one concrete playground thing and Cabro Bay. That's basically the only actual like acknowledgement of his existence. It's in this source book as an official thing.
That's amazing.
These guys have obviously spent way too much time researching things.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Wow.
but not quite enough. Not quite enough.
so anyway, I find the whole thing intensely entertaining.
Right. So I mean, like the common thread here is that the three of us find guilty pleasures in things that are
Ludicrous and really well or really fully realized.
there's a lot
and
of
like,
love in
or
those
not
books.
realized, but like yeah, the people. It's I find it interesting to to look at stuff where people the people who are doing it
Right.
obviously really give a shit about it.
Well, yeah, it's like
and I
you
mean,
can
like-
think of the person who is like writing it. They're like, "This is so cool!" Like they
Yeah.
were really into it. They weren't just like, what garbage
You
are we
can
gonna
feel
like
their enthusiasm.
spin out for
Yeah.
these dumbass rubes?
Actually, now that I
people
think
were
more
really
about
into
it, these are all actually very similar properties.
Yeah,
In the idea that they're all like feature enormous things that are skull based.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Lot of
Ridiculous.
skulls.
large
Yeah, skulls
mega
are sort of-
engineering skull projects.
Yes. Yeah, skulls are kind of a motif in
Oh my
riffs as
God.
well. It's true.
Well, they're those dudes that are like 100% skull.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Skullman.
Yeah.
I could imagine them like actually unironically having that name. It's just like the Legion of Skullmen.
Actually, the other awesome thing in riffs
Skull Force.
is there's an AI thing called Archie, who's this. It's like an AI that was built before the whole thing happened,
Right.
Uh-huh.
and then and it's in this like underground bunker, and it basically this big all this stuff happened. This apocalypse happened, and it sealed up this underground bunker with like a few people.
Right.
With the people who were like the scientists and stuff still in and kept them safe. And then when it thought it was safe, it was like, okay, we can try to go and see what's going on.
Right.
And raiders came in and killed everybody.
Oh no!
And so Archie's basically gone insane because there's like nobody, and so has started build it because he's in like a giant robot factory that he
Right,
controls,
right,
and so
right.
he's like building robots and stuff. But the best part about it is it's supposed to be part of adventure, and like the guys the heroes like go in and there's this huge like brain,
Right.
like Archie is this like big brain with like cables attached to it and goes and like who has disturbed my slumber. Right. And so they killed it, and then they like, okay, they kill the brain, they go away. That's not Archie. It's like he talks about like at the very end of the
Right.
the thing.
That's
Archie is like a 2 foot by 2 foot cube
Right.
embedded in concrete like 10 miles below the surface of the earth.
Right. It's kind of like smashing the monitor on a computer.
And it just keeps building these big brain things for people to come and destroy.
That's just like a scarecrow, like the
Right.
owl on the barn roof.
Yeah, it's figured out that it can just build, adventurers will come in every once in a while to, mess up a bunch of stuff in its base
Right.
and destroy a bit, and then adventurers are looking for like some big brain thing to destroy, and so they do that, and then it goes cool, and then they all leave, and then
Right.
he just continues on his little merry way.
Well, I mean, like, I guess all of these things, would you qualify them as juvenile?
I think so.
Yeah.
I
mean,
don't know if
the-
juvenile's the right word.
I mean, in
like
they were
juvenile in the sense that I was also big into this stuff when I was like 12.
because
Yeah,
like,
no, like you're 13 years old, and
like my taste in this kind of stuff hasn't really changed that
you
much.
just like recognizes like,
Yeah.
right?
Well, juvenile in the context of it being a positive trait, because most of the time,
When you say juvenile, you mean
you usually mean like immature, you know, just like.
But I think it's sort of a.
though?
Well,
It's
yeah.
sort of it's sort of a throwback, and I mean I think that's part of the appeal is that it's
Oh, yeah.
like that it's you
that
know
it's very kind of innocent in a way, almost.
yeah it is there's a certain
It's like
charming.
this was how my brain was working when I was. Like,
I mean it's weird to
13.
talk about like this horrible, depressing, apocalyptic future as being charming, but it is in a certain way.
It is because it's super rad. Because like everybody's like running around with, you know, gigantic guns fighting dragons.
Yeah, being awesome.
Like it's the you know, it's an action movie. It's not for the most part, you know, it's meant to be like grim and serious and like a really, you know, it's not like The Road,
No.
which is sort of the other end of the spectrum where it's just
Yeah.
like here's an apocalypse scenario where it's just like it might actually be.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
The real apocalypse
This is the
would
fun
be
apocalypse.
really sucky.
Yeah.
And being a random person in, you know, the Riffs or the 40K universe would also be really sucky.
But you're never that person.
So we don't want to read about those people.
Yeah.
You're the cool guys.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like the
We want to read about the
I have a
10-foot
lar-
tall monster people.
Yeah, with like a largely skull-based wardrobe who have guns that fire missiles
It's like
pretty much.
that explode into axes.
it's got to be like at a certain point it's got to be like if everything is skulls, it's got to eventually lose its fear.
Yeah.
Right. It's just be like that's what an outfit looks like. It's not like you like eventually you would lose the association with like that's my
Yeah.
you know that's like
Yeah,
an
memento
internal part of
mori.
my body.
Right. It's like, man, have you ever noticed that our hats are shaped like the inside of your head? Like, that's really weird. I wonder if anyone noticed that.
Oh man.
It's it's like the axe cop thing or you know
Yeah.
whatever. It's that idea of sort of
That's actually another good example. I mean, it's like I think it either has to have that line where it's just like it's played completely straight and it's just like really earnest, you know, this nice throwback, or it has to be really like self-aware of how stupid it is and like really rib itself. Like Homestuck is like that.
Right.
It's a continual self-parody.
Right.
Like it's making jokes of and about itself, like all the time. You know, and that's part of why I like it is because like it is, you know, and again, it's another like huge space epic.
Right.
But it's like ostensibly about our generation, like friends on the internet and just like video games and shit like that. I mean, like the kind of jokes that are told in that comic are like, there's a guy who gets restrained at one point and he's tied up with a Stretch Armstrong.
Huh. Right.
Like that's the joke. It's like if you even know what a Stretch Armstrong is, you realize just how ridiculous that is. You know.
well,
So, yeah.
What other kinds of things? Do we have anything else like music, food? What kind of food do you feel guilty about eating but not? Like
I mean, probably just like any sort of fast food or like anything,
Yeah.
any sort of like outrageous desserts.
ooh, yeah. Like I really love like I drink a lot of Coke. Which is really bad and not even very good. I stopped for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then I had one, and it tasted awful, but it felt good. It felt so good.
Yeah.
I mean for food I always think about like we were talking about this the other day that like you know like Mr. Noodles or
Oh, yeah,
or
yeah.
like you know Pizza Pockets or
Yeah.
stuff like that where and my thing with that is I always think about like the time the median time between when I actually eat that for a meal coincides perfectly with the amount of time it takes to forget what it tastes like.
Yeah. I mean, I think KFC is like that. Like I have it once a year to remind myself of how abysmal it is.
Well, like I one of the bus stops I get off to go and get groceries is right next to a KFC, and I haven't eaten KFC probably in about 6 years or 7 years now. And the smell will hit me, and I feel this thing in my stomach that just goes, yes,
and of course they vent the smell
Yeah.
outside, right?
yes, we want that. And I'm like, we really don't, but kind of do, because it's
Yeah.
just the smell of like, I guess it's that thing that you crave, right? The salt, fat,
Salt, fat,
umami.
umami,
Crispy, crunchy, hot kind of thing.
MSG, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it's all pleasure and not really any substance.
So, do you think that maps back onto what we were talking about earlier with like the enormous chainsaw wielding?
I think you're right.
Oh, I think so.
this launch where
In
it's
some
like
way.
it's not juvenile in the sense that it's juvenile in the sense that it appeals to a very kind of like fundamental
You know what it is?
pleasure thing.
It's eating the middle out of the bread. You know what I mean?
Explain.
So, like, maybe I don't know if you ever did this when you were a kid, but like, you get a loaf of bread and you just eat the soft white middle and no crust.
Oh no, I totally went for the crust. I have a texture thing.
Okay, so then that example isn't going to work for you. What about you, Paul?
No.
Damn it!
I've actually seen people do.
This
Didn't
metaphor
Morgan
isn't
do
gonna
that,
work.
where he would take like a loaf of French bread, saw off the top, and just kind of like reach in and you like first time I.
Okay, James is giving me a thumb up. Okay, I'm not
like
crazy.
like where
No,
I
no,
saw
I-
somebody
like,
do this. And
I can
thought they were
see
eating
the-
a bag of chips.
I can
at
see the
first.
appeal.
No, okay, another example would be like eating whipped topping from the can. It's
Okay.
just like you are taking only the best part, you know, that like you're supposed to have, you know, it as a part of something, but it's like, really, this is just the part I want.
Right. It's like Mitch Hedberg's joke about getting fruit on your waffles, so you have something to brush aside.
Yeah, you know what? It's just like if you were really honest with what you wanted, you would just get a plate of whipped cream
Yeah.
Right.
and eat
right.
that. And I think that's what these things are like. It's just like just the good stuff, which is also the bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is what I want.
Yeah, it doesn't even particularly have any flavor. It has a sensation, right? Like, I like eating ramen because it's just basically as close as I can get to drinking salt.
I mean, the
Right?
weird.
Well, like I described getting. We shot this, I went and got a cappuccino and a croissant at Parsonage, and I described a croissant as being as close as we've ever gotten to just buttering air.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. It's just like, you know, it's
I
the thinnest formality,
Mm-hmm.
you know, taking you one step away from just like chowing down on a stick of butter covered in sugar, you know, and it's like mountain climbers do that because they need the calories, but it's just like
right.
Yeah.
I've definitely thought about, you know, that being a thing that you would just do. It's just like, oh, it's so good. I feel so dirty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess it is just like a very direct, just like, bzz, this is
Yeah.
what I want.
So, like, I mean, these aren't. When we call these guilty pleasures, I think what we're really kind of protesting is the thin veneer of plausibility we give to our impulses. Right? That it's some, like, does it offend us a little bit that.
Well, I mean, it's like,
I mean, it's the.
do we not want to admit that, like, we're not cool enough to. No, that didn't work.
It's the knowledge. It's like, you know, I try to, you know, if I sort of like if I you know, sort of, I guess, state something publicly, or, you know, talk about something with people, I'd like to be able to defend my position, right? If somebody challenges me on
Okay,
something,
right.
you know, if I'm like, I really enjoy House of Cards, and somebody's like, no, that show sucks, then I can be like, well, it's good for this reasons.
Right.
You know, Kevin Spacey's awesome. This is good. These plot lines, you know, whatever.
Okay, right.
If you, these are things that
Well, they're indefensible.
I can't
For the
really
most
defend.
part, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I can't really. I mean, maybe us talking about it right now has convinced you, but I have no desire to, like, if somebody says, you know, that sounds stupid, I'm like, yeah, it probably
Yeah,
does.
Well, it's like
I have no, like, I have no sort of, none of my ego is tied up in convincing other people to also
Yeah.
enjoy this thing. It's
But
just,
I'm-
okay.
I
it's
can
just
see how
like,
people-
I enjoy it, but that has no that has no relationship to whether it's good or not.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe the reason people try to conceal it is like, as you say, if it's as indefensible as, you know, we think it is, if people were to find out, then you'd sort of be caught with your pants down, right? It's like, I can't defend this, and people are just going to be like, why do you like that? And you're like,
I don't know.
because people hate being wrong about stuff.
Well, yeah.
But
They hate it.
and I mean, yeah, and it sucks
And-
to be wrong about stuff.
And to be judged about things.
But then it's
feels
that
bad.
it is that it's like it sucks to be wrong about stuff, and then you realize it's like, wait a minute, this is my own opinion. I don't have to defend it against other people.
Yeah.
It's my opinion. I think it's cool, but if you don't agree, that's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt me
Yeah.
that you think.
If it is something that I'm trying to advocate for, that I'm trying to spread, then yeah, I will try to convince other people to do it. You know.
Yeah.
I feel
If I
as
want
though-
somebody to watch a cool YouTube video that I saw, then I'll talk about why I liked it.
It sounds
Right.
like it's a lot more difficult when you're young.
Well, I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly
you're
when you're-
trying to craft a persona that
When you're
people are
less
gonna
sure of
like.
yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
definitely.
is this where we wind up with like super grim, dark, serious Batman movies?
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, Batman is cool because it's about serious stuff and it's very mature and
Watch-
it's grown
Well,
up.
that's the.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, I've heard that, you know, that the big difference between DC and Marvel in their cinematic stuff and why Marvel has been so much more successful is that Marvel isn't afraid to be a comic book.
Yeah,
Right.
or
And
just
that-
a little bit serious, and
Yeah.
then you can vacillate.
And then, but DC seems a bit embarrassed.
Yeah, DC, it's like
So like, no, Batman's cool.
it's like
serious.
in like the Dark Knight or whatever, like Batman often doesn't seem like he belongs in his own movie.
Right.
It's like we're having this super serious detective movie, and then
and
this
then all
guy
of a sudden, a
shows
dude
up.
dressed as a rat, is like
It's like
growling and punching people out.
it's like
and
Batman. Could you maybe leave for a sec? We are trying to have a serious conversation here.
it's weird, right? Because like superheroes, I think are fundamentally a ridiculous idea.
Certainly, yeah.
And I think you have to work really hard to make them work in a serious context, and even then, it's like
You don't like
Yeah.
not really.
Well, like, I mean, it kind of. The one that springs to mind that actually worked while tackling like ostensibly serious subject matter. I can't believe I'm fucking saying this. Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I love
where
that
it
movie.
where it dealt with like the bad guys were like trying to come up with like this global surveillance technology that they used for assassinations, and it turned out it was Hydra all along.
Oh.
Hail Hydra. And it should have been taking itself way too seriously, but I think having the enemy just be actual literal double Nazis.
I really like that movie.
Yeah.
I think that like that style of film is really like on the what I consider the correct wavelength for a superhero movie, where it's like, it's cool, but it's not too afraid to just be like
Yeah.
every
But it-
every once in a while.
It also had like just that hint of the word I'm looking for. I may have just had a tiny stroke because my vocabulary has disappeared. Of
Issues,
relevance.
yeah.
there you go.
where the like surveillance overreach by Western intelligence agencies is a problem we actually have, and it would be nice if Captain America could just punch his way out of it.
Yeah, and it's the like. I mean, I actually what the other thing I liked about the Winter Soldier is it's like, there's like Hydra is going to do this evil thing, and Captain America is like, even before the Hydra stuff, Captain America's like, no,
This is a bad idea.
the thing that the good people want to do with it is also terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought he should have been even more against it, to be like, he was like, I don't think this is a great idea.
I also
But-
kind of like that their
I
plan
love
is
that.
like the battle vessel actually has an individual gun for each person.
Yeah,
Basically, it's like targeting, this baby.
He will one day
with
grow
my
up to be
database.
evil.
Yeah.
That was a good movie, and it also had like some genuine sort of like moments, like with Cap and Bucky. It was just sort of like, I'm not too proud to admit that I got a little,
Little misty
a
eye.
little misty. I was like, oh,
I seem to have
It was
a
good.
speck of dust or something.
it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Them
think
feels.
I think certainly I mean the Marvel movies have certainly brought a whole new, that level of that line between ridiculous, over the topness and sort of seriousness.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's definitely parts where, there's, like, real stuff on the line. It's like when Nick Fury looks like he's going to be dead.
Right.
And then, like, a few scenes later, Cap's just, like, riding down the elevator, and all these dudes keep getting on.
Right.
And he finally realizes that it's like, oh, you're all here to beat the shit out of me. And he's like, before we get started, does anybody want to get out? It's just like, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean... Yeah, I it's hard to put Captain America as like a guilty pleasure, considering how
Captain America's the best, Steve.
Considering how successful the Marvel franchises have been.
Like, I suppose I could be spending my time, instead of watching Captain America, I could be watching there's that stroke again. I don't know, a Tarkovsky movie or something, which would be kind of cool. I could be watching Stalker.
I do want to see that, and it's like, why can't you watch both?
Yeah, you can totally watch both. You can enjoy both.
You don't have to be all in on one type of thing, right?
Yeah, you can enjoy Xbox and PlayStation.
And PC. You don't have to choose. You don't have to, like, swear an oath of fealty to, like, one console.
Yeah.
That's really stupid. That's actually what the companies want you to do so that they can sell you stuff. So, anyways,
be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself.
Like what you like.
Like what you like, and who gives a shit what other people think. The kind of people that would judge you for liking stuff that you like, maybe reassess that friendship, or just, like, probably people you don't want to associate with in the first place.
I mean,
a friend of mine told me once that a guilty pleasure is what we call something when we're afraid of actually liking it because we think it'll make us sound like an asshole. But you can't not sound...
It's not so much... Like, I mean, I guess in certain circumstances it's an asshole. It's more like... Make you sound like you have,
chump.
like, or like you have bad taste or something, right?
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. It's just like,
But then you wind up in, like, this weird one-upmanship where you're like, oh, my guilty pleasure, it's Dostoevsky.
It's like bullshit. I mean, it could be true, but it's probably not.
I generally like a bit more sophisticated Russian romantic novelists, right? Everyone knows Dostoevsky. He's way too popular.
I was just thinking about, I mean, to sort of, I guess, change gears a little bit, like, in terms of music. Like, I have a great fondness for certain, like, ridiculous, like, Europop stuff.
Oh, man, like, I love that stuff
little,
so
like,
much.
Like Aqua or Toy Box or stuff.
Like,
almost these things that are basically, completely pointless without the, like, accompanying, like, ridiculously awesome music videos to go along with them. Usually, like, there's the bands that, like, have a music video for every song that they produce.
Right.
And so, yeah, like
the
Aqua
cheesy, repetitive synth pop and, like, saccharine lyrics. I just love that shit.
Well, the like the woman with the high voice and the guy with the low gravelly voice that you always have to have in the group.
Right. Well, and I mean, like, there's a fine line between, like, pop music, which is actually quite bad, and pop music, which is a highly evolved super predator on the order of a shark, which is actually just, like, totally perfect, right? Owen Pallett used to write an article about how pop music worked, right? And good pop music is actually really sophisticated when it needs to be. It's not bad music by any stretch of the imagination because it does exactly what it sets out to do, and it uses some pretty impressive techniques sometimes to do it.
Well, it's like
and then on the other hand, there's also just really bad music with stupid lyrics and not very impressive musicianship, and some of that I fucking love.
Yep.
I really like VNV Nation.
Oh my god, I love those guys. They're so good.
Like, they're so dopey.
But it's like
And they,
it's
I don't
sweet.
think, I'm not a musician, but I don't think they really know what they're doing.
Well, I don't know. They've put out a lot of albums, haven't they?
They have.
So
Probably they do.
perfect. I'm going to go for the throat here and add to this one-upmanship contest and just say there is
One
about
downmanship.
one downmanship. There's like about 3 ICP songs that I really like.
I stab people.
Yes, I Stab People is
4 or 5 people
genius.
every day.
I have like not heard any ICP songs except for the Miracles one.
I love
But-
that song.
But I love I've watched a ton of just the guys themselves, like as themselves as much as they are themselves. Just then, they're like not only interviews with them, but for a while they were doing a series where they were doing basically like not like mystery science, not quite mystery science theater, but like they would basically show them movie trailers.
And they just commentate on
they'll
it?
be commenting on it. And it would always be like, whether they want to have sex with the female people in it,
Right.
or like somebody's ass, or different stuff like that. But it's just this like amazing like lack
Stream of consciousness.
lack of filter and almost a certain sort of charming
Right.
sort of naivete about the whole thing that I found great, where they're just like very, very open about what they are thinking and what they feel.
Right.
And I mean, sort of
like,
ICP to a T, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we do come at this from kind of, I'm going to use this word, a place of privilege here, where we can read and participate in like all this incredibly stupid shit and don't have to feel terribly threatened by the fact that there are basically no women apart from the girl in things like Riddick. Or
Never thought about that.
yeah,
Because of course it's like it's like water, to a fish. It's like
Yeah.
oh right.
yeah, like this is kind of the milieu that we have been existing in since probably late childhood.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well-
I think that's as I was saying, the like the taste in the like the 40K and the Riffs and all that stuff. Those were things that I enjoyed when I was like 12, when it didn't seem like that big an issue.
Right.
When whatever, girls
like,
are gross.
It's
or
interesting
not gross, but just like whatever.
They're orthogonal to my interests. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because
Big
like
chainsaws and flamethrowers. No, that's what I want.
One
Yeah.
of the other reasons that I like Jupiter Ascending a lot is it was like what we're all describing,
Yeah.
but aimed like it had female gaze in it.
Yeah, no, I've heard that before.
It's
like the comment that I really enjoyed about Jupiter Ascending was like, is this what men get all the time in their action movies?
I think it is. I think that they actually just like took the like ridiculous over the top 4 dudes action movie and just like inverted it,
Right.
and it's still great. And
Right.
it's just like interesting from a slightly different perspective. It's like you have a main character who's a woman, and the dude spends about a third of the movie with his shirt off.
Right.
And I was into it, because I'm like, this
Right.
is really great.
Yeah, no,
This is
okay,
like,
yeah.
I see why you like this, and like it gives you an outside perspective to like things that you have your own interest in. You're like, oh, I get it now.
Right.
I'm being pandered to, and maybe it's kind of sweet sometimes. Legit. No, it's a movie worth seeing.
Okay.
Because it's interesting and super fun and not boring. It's like we had this discussion about the Wachowski movies, and it's just like, not all of them have really hit the nail on the head, but we've never really been bored by them.
Yeah, and even
That's
when
something
like
they're never guilty of.
even when there's no action going on, you're not bored because sometimes you're just flabbergasted that this is happening.
Yeah.
Like Cloud Atlas wasn't a movie heavy on action, but it didn't bore me because I spent the entire movie going, I can't believe they made this.
And it's just like
Now I want to see that.
And it's one of those things where it's like I want to see this movie partially because I want to see it, and partially because I want to support the idea. I want to support the idea that movies like this can be made. Not
Right.
even necessarily this particular one, but that in
Yeah.
the future movie studios will continue to.
So we'd like to see
Fun.
more of this, so eventually we'll have like some more good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that idea, but yeah, it's an interesting idea.
I'm in a similar boat with like the tourism simulator games that I play, because not all of them are great, but I'm like, I want more.
Tourism simulator?
People call them walking simulator games,
okay, right.
and I really resent that term because I think it's really reductive and disrespectful and just like oversimplifies what they are. It's basically games like Gone Home and
like Dear Esther,
right, and Leviathan, the Old City, and stuff like that.
Games where it's just
where basically there's like no gameplay. You just walk around and like look
it's just
at
a
stuff.
matter of looking at
right.
I fucking love those games, and I want to see more, so they get better. Because like there's a thing that I think they could be that they haven't gotten to yet. And the only way they're gonna get there is through like people doing them and practicing them, and just like finally we'll get one that's good. We're getting there. It's like
It's interesting. I think maybe it's probably a whole other podcast talking about video game stuff, but.
I call them tourism simulators because it's like you're in a place and it's cool to hang out in,
right?
And there's stuff to look at, and you don't have to solve puzzles or shoot anything.
Right.
So, anyway, guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
So I guess we haven't actually. Basically, I realized that what we've actually done on this podcast, as opposed to like exposing our guilty pleasures, have just been like the following things are awesome. Let's really geek out about why they're so awesome.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was actually the original idea for this podcast, but I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out.
No, I dig it.
I like Taylor Swift.
I like Dragon Ball Z.
It's just getting it all out there.
Yeah.
I watched all of House MD. Yeah. It ends with them riding off into the sunset on a motorcycle.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I didn't know that.
The main reason why I watch all of House is 'cause actually that's actually a good one for me is TV shows. I'll watch TV shows that I almost get in like a habit of watching.
Right.
And then I'll like, for whatever reason, I'll like forget about it and stop watching it. And I'll realize 3 or 4 weeks later, it's like, I haven't watched this show for a while and I don't really care.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't. It's like I spent so much time watching this show and religiously keeping it up, but I didn't actually care that much.
Yeah, no, I have that relationship with Walking Dead. Every once in a while I'll remember that it exists and I'll watch the next season of it and think, get eaten! All of you just die.
But I love Hugh Laurie so much that I had to keep watching House.
He is a pretty great guy.
I like Nathan Fillion so much that I continue watching Castle, even though it's only mediocre.
Right.
And very, very I do watch shows just because I like certain people, even if they're not doing very interesting things. Like House started out actually legitimately good.
Right.
And got really bad, and then got a little bit better, and then got really bad again. I can definitely not recommend it, but there are some highly amusing things in it, and it does get quite ridiculous.
Well,
so anyway, but yes, we all have things that we don't like, or that we like, but we probably shouldn't, but we're okay.
Yeah.
And you should be too.
We're okay. You're okay.
So go like that thing that you're not supposed to like. I'm air quoting for those
in fact, post in the discussion thread for this podcast.
You might find some cool stuff there.
And and I'm gonna say that I bet 90% of the stuff that people post, people are gonna post I like this, and then there'll be a bunch of people responding to it being like, I like that too.
Yeah.
Well, all it takes is one person to admit to it, and everyone else can be like,
we're all going to come storming out of the closet here and admit that we like video games.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We're going to wind up in a real, self-reinforcing feel-good position here where we all like each other's stuff and acknowledge that it's all valid.
No,
it's the worst. All right. Well, we better just stop this podcast before that starts.
We hope this is informative and at least enjoyable.
Yeah. Toodles, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.